Our top story this hour, President Donald Trump has now officially imposed tariffs on $50 billion worth of Chinese exports. Those will apply to more than 800 products. China is vowing an immediate response. Mr. Trump says all of this is punishment for the Chinese theft of U.S. intellectual property. Now, these tariffs against China, they come as Mr. Trump is picking fights also with Canada, with Mexico, and the EU. Now, let's bring in Robert Koepp. He is a director of the Economist Corporate Network, and he joins us now for more on this breaking news story this hour. And Robert, thank you for joining us.
Thank you,
he's gone ahead and he's done this. Donald Trump has slapped tariffs on $50 billion worth of Chinese goods. Is this the beginning of a trade war?
We'll have to see. To have a real trade war, you have to have back and forth. And China has promised retaliation. And then to really escalate to what we'd call more than just a skirmish, it takes what Trump has threatened, another $100 billion worth of tariffs following that. Once we get to that stage and we really see escalation, we can call it a war. It's still early stage, but it's certainly a hostile act from the perspective of China.
And as you said, China said it will respond. So just how far can China go to retaliate? How can China really hurt the United States in return?
Well, it can make it a lot more difficult. I mean, the Chinese market is by no means easy for foreign companies to operate in. And so their real leverage is to make it even tougher. One thing that's kind of interesting is Qualcomm, a U.S. chip manufacturer, that has had a lot of the issues the Trump administration is alleging, forced technology transfer and so forth. It's trying to make an acquisition of a European company, but China, over issues of monopoly, anti-monopoly laws, can veto that. And it's been said that they've approved it internally, but they're waiting to see what the U.S. does. So that deal, for example, might just go to the wayside now. China might reject it, even though it previously internally approved it on the merits of the economic validation of the acquisition, that it wouldn't actually threaten Chinese competition. So that's one example of what we might see as the first kind of fallout of the escalating trade tensions.
Yeah, a variety of American industries are bracing for the fallout, including the tech sector. You mentioned Qualcomm.
Yep.
Why did Trump launch this? What is his goal here? You know, he's doing this to pressure China into action on trade. Could it work? Could it actually make China fall in line and end unfair trade practices?
Well, believe it or not, this is somewhat unorthodox, and certainly I must say, you know, my own media organization, The Economist, is very much against tariffs. I personally am too. I think for a lot of economic reasons they don't make sense. But to your point, Kristie, the toughness. China respects strength. That's part of its political economy. It's part of its political mindset. And so, strangely enough, although there's not a lot of economic justification for the action, one does wonder if, in fact, it might compel China to come to the negotiating table and start to open up its markets. That's certainly the strategy implied in all the announcements that have come from the Trump administration.
And the economic impact as this potential trade war begins. You know, we do have legitimate tension. It's going to have an impact on U.S. businesses in China. It's going to have impact on China's own rapid growth. And it's going to have a global economic impact as well.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. In fact, one of the interesting stories that sometimes comes up, but I don't think is discussed enough, is this trade imbalance with China isn't just with China. China, you know, is a final assembler of a lot of products, including things like the iPhone, so American products that are being imported. And you have certain components. In fact, the U.S. is one of the top 3 suppliers of components to Chinese manufacturing. So it's countries like Japan, the U.S. itself, South Korea, Taiwan, not to be politically incorrect, the area of Taiwan, we'll just say. Anyway, but those are, you know, external trading partners to mainland China, and they're all in that value chain. So they're also exposed. In fact, based on the size of their economies, they're more exposed than China, with the exception of the U.S. But the U.S. will also suffer in this in any case. And it is something that goes way beyond China, absolutely.
Yeah, with the global economy being exposed here, there is a lot at stake. So what is the solution? Can there be talks to dial this back, or could this just be a long tit-for-tat battle ahead?
Well, I'm afraid the pessimistic outlook, and one that kind of seems to apply as we see the current state of negotiations, is the latter, that it's more tit-for-tat retaliation until both sides, and really kind of all sides involved in the World Trade Organization and the various multilateral agreements, start to realize some of the problems. I would say the deeper issue with all of this is actually populism. It's the thing that created Trump's rise to power. It's also what we see with Brexit and what we see going on in Italy and so forth. So that's the deeper issue. It's making fair trade seem like it's fair for everybody, not just global corporations, and I will include myself, global elites who profit from the global economy. We need to make average workers more participatory in this system.